Hey friends, my name is Sam and welcome back to Sam's Garden Project. Today I thought I would share a video on ways I save money in the garden, some frugal gardening hacks and tips for you. I know that it's on a lot of people's minds how to save some money here and there, and I'm just going to go through some of the ways that I do it in my garden. Feel free to add anything that you do that I don't list today in the comments for other people to share and look at. So this isn't an exhaustive list, there's plenty of other things you can do, but this is just what I do personally to save some money in the garden. So let's begin going through some of the tips that I have. So number one, I reuse pots and containers for seedlings. So that includes any pots that you might buy from the nursery, plants that come in little black plastic pots. Wash them out, reuse them for growing seedlings or cuttings or anything like that. Containers for seedlings, also like the recycling. So any like containers that your groceries come in, like ice cream containers or butter containers or anything like that, just give them a wash out, put some holes in them, and they can also be used as seedling pots or growing medium growing containers. Another thing that I personally use is meat trays, the ones that have like a thick rim around them. They're quite good for starting seeds in. You would have seen in my greenhouse in a few videos previous that I use the meat trays for starting seeds when I'm wanting to plant a lot of seeds all at once rather than just like one or two. So I can just have a meat tray, sprinkle the seeds on top, and it's got lots of space, lots of room for lots of seeds to germinate. So on this as well, using cardboard from groceries and any cardboard you get in deliveries or whatnot, to shred up into compost, use it in the garden. Cardboard is paper, it's a carbon product. It depends on the type of cardboard. I know sometimes it can be covered in like a glossy, I don't know what it is exactly, but it's glossy paper. That's not very good for the garden, so put that in the recycling, or you can even use it as a fire starter, like to help start a fire. But with cardboard and any like packaging from muesli bars or anything that comes in a cardboard box, I just shred it up personally. I shred it up into tiny little bits and then chuck them in my worm farm or into my compost bin. Or if I need to have something like to suppress weeds, you can just put cardboard flat on the ground, like on a path or on the garden beds to suppress weeds. Adds a layer of like mulch, or it adds a layer to like the lasagna style of garden beds where you're adding different layers to that eventually break down and add nutrients. Just make sure if you're using cardboard boxes that deliveries come in, that you're removing all the tape and the stickers that come with it, because they're not, especially the tape, it's not biodegradable if it comes in that plastic tape. I know some companies are reverting to using like paper tape. I know some of my Amazon deliveries are coming in paper tape, but I haven't done any research on whether they're compost, like it's actually paper or not. So let's move on to the next one. Water. So water tanks and water storage. I have quite a few water tanks on my property here, and it is a large investment up front to install them and connect them and have them all like working. But once they're installed, once they're on your property, they the savings that you have in watering your garden is monumental. Like to the heat of summer, it doesn't rain as much here in Melbourne. It depends on how the seasons are going, but usually summers are really hot and dry, and having water tanks and having a store of water on your property that doesn't cost anything to use is massive. So it keeps your plants alive, it keeps things healthy, it keeps things growing, and the water is free. You don't need to pay a water company to use that water. Just like if you're using tap water or drinking water, you need to pay for that. Where if you have a tank water, you can use it on your garden, no worries. There's nothing wrong with using tank water on your garden. It's actually perfect. It's actually a great way to save money on bills and stuff like that. So in and of itself, this tip goes hand in hand with gardening, and that's growing veggies and growing herbs. So growing veggies obviously saves money on buying produce, saves money at the grocery store, and also it tastes a lot better. It's really not that difficult to grow something at all. Like, I know people only grow tomatoes in summer, or they only grow a certain thing when it's in season, or just like pick one thing that you really enjoy eating, or something that grows really prolific, and you just grow it. Dedicate a little garden bed to it if you haven't got much space, and you'll find that if you enjoy that crop, that fruit, vegetable, herb, whatever it is, that you look forward to its harvest, looking after it as it's growing, trying to get the most out of it, and you'll enjoy it. It tastes a lot better as well. So with herbs as well, that's so easy to grow. Just get a little seedling from Bunnings, chuck them in a pot. Herbs at the supermarket, if you buy fresh herbs, they're quite expensive for the amount that you actually get. It's like $3-4 for like a little tray of fresh herbs. Even the dried ones, it's like a few dollars here and there. They all add up in little containers. But if you have fresh herbs growing in your garden, you can just go outside and pick whatever you need when you need, and fresh is always best. It always tastes better. You know where it's come from, you know what's been put onto it, like chemicals and pesticides and whatnot, and you just have that peace of mind knowing that this herb, this fruit, this vegetable that you've grown yourself has come from a place that's, you control what goes onto it. So once you've grown vegetables, herbs, seeds, flowers, whatever it is, saving seed is a big tip for the next growing season. So obviously if you were to buy seed from a seed company, it costs some money. Seeds packets range from $1 to like $6 a packet, depending on what variety it is that you're buying. So saving seed is a very economical way to continue the growing cycle. Most plants go to seed, or they set seed, or they reproduce, they propagate themselves in some way or another. So if you're looking at growing something that you want to save their seed, learn about its reproduction cycle, learn how it reproduces itself. So some things have a seed, so like a bean or some fruits, they've got seeds on the inside, so when the fruit falls off the tree, the seed, like the fruit, rots on the ground, and then that feeds the seed to grow, for an example. Also like pumpkins, you know, they've got the seeds in the middle, you've got the capsicums, they've got the whole seed in the middle. So same type of thing, they produce their own seeds so that they can sustain themselves, they can keep growing, reproducing. So even like random things like ferns, they reproduce themselves by like spores. Sometimes with trees, their roots actually produce suckers. So if a tree is cut down at the base, there might be another one pop up somewhere where their root was going. So everything has a way of reproducing itself. Just do some research on how you, like what you want to save, what seeds you want to save, how that plant reproduces itself, and the best way to go about it, because every plant is kind of different. So also on saving seeds, during winter, it's very common to save seeds of like winter crops, because then they go to flower. Flowering produces a seed. So when you've got a crop going to flower, you've got the pollinators coming around, it's pollinating, it's feeding on the nectar and the pollen of that plant going to seed. It just takes time, but that flower will turn into a seed pod, and that's what you harvest. So learn the life cycle of plants. It just adds to your knowledge of how things grow, how things work, and it kind of just completes that circle of life system, but in a plant sense rather than an animal sense. So once you do save your seeds, store them in a cool, dry place, and plant them when appropriate. So you're not going to plant, like, well, in my area in Melbourne here, I'm not going to plant broccoli or brassica seeds in the middle of summer, because they're just not going to grow very well at all, and they're going to go straight to flower. They're not going to produce a harvest. So make sure that you're tailoring your seeds to the right growing conditions, and only planting them when they're in season. Another tip about saving seeds, if you're going to save seeds, save the best producing, the healthiest plant, so that you keep that genetic information in the seed, and you're going to be growing that type next season. So say if it's been really hot and the plant sustained really well, like it hasn't died off in the heat, then that's a really it's got an adaptation that's really positive that you want in your garden and your environment. So you want to kind of keep that. So it's like survival of the fittest kind of thing. if something grows really well, really big, really healthy, produces lots of fruit, lots of like crop, then you want to try and tailor the traits that you're selecting to give on to the next generation of plants, of seeds. Oh, seed saving went longer than I thought. I just feel like I had a lot to say about seed saving. So the next one is repurposing. Repurposing is a big thing that I really love doing. In my garden, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of like random things lying around. I've got some wheelbarrows, I've got like random pots and stuff that I've just got, and like cages, like those wire cages to protect plants from my dogs and from other birds and stuff. So I find a lot of stuff really cheap or for free on Facebook Marketplace, on the side of the road, like on a nature strip, or even at like tip shops or like recycling centres. If it's too good to go to landfill, some of those places will actually have like a little like shop on the side of the recycling or like the tip, and they're just happy to save resources from landfill, so they normally give them away pretty cheap, or for a few dollars, or it just depends. Like, you get to know your local tip shop, your local recycling centre, and also if you're after something particular, browse Facebook Marketplace. It's amazing what people want to get rid of, and if you're in something particular or ask your buy nothing pages, people are normally there to help out, and they'll go through their shed, their backyards, they might be moving, they want a bit declutter, just repurposing things. Everything's got a second purpose, a second life, third life, fourth life. Like, it's what you do with it. So I don't know if I've shown you specifically, but I've got 2 wheelbarrows in my garden, and obviously they don't work. They are rusted, they have got holes in the bottom. They wouldn't be very good as wheelbarrows, they wouldn't hold anything. But because they're like the old style rusted metal wheelbarrows, I got them really cheap, like $10 each maybe, from a tip store, like a tip shop. And I've got a succulent one. So one's full of succulents with like succulents draping over, and then one's got some ranunculus and some flowering, I don't know what type of flower, but some flowers in it as well. And so they look really, really pretty. I need to go and give my succulent wheelbarrow a trim because it's being a bit overgrown now, but I will show you that wheelbarrow. So something else that is really, really good, and they're kind of pushing a lot more households to do, is composting. So that's keeping food waste out of landfill. There's the stat that compostable material in landfill emits more methane and greenhouse gases than other things breaking down, but then green waste can be turned into compost, and it's an additive with beneficial nutrients. So why is it going into landfill and producing something negative when it can be recycled and put back to the earth with something positive, like with all that nutrients in it? So composting, I have 3 worm farms. I bought one brand new when I moved into this property. I got one off Facebook Marketplace for like $20–30, so super cheap. And then I got one off my parents, who they just let it kind of go to, not go to waste, but they weren't looking after it, and so I took it off their hands to kind of make the most of that resource. So I've got 3 worm farms. I have a compost bin, like an in-ground in-situ compost bin, like a big black tub, which you've probably seen in my videos, that has a lot of food scraps in it as well. And I also have chickens. So chickens are their own separate topic, but they also help with the composting because they eat a lot of food scraps as well. So certain food scraps we give to the chickens, they enjoy eating, and then they provide poop, and then we line their bedding with like sugarcane mulch and newspaper and straw, and then it all just goes into the compost bin. So let's move on to that tip. So after composting, for my frugal gardening hack is chickens. So if you have the space in like an urban setting, I know not everyone can, but I really wanted to have some chickens, just in general. So I was really pushing my partner to build a little like keep for them to keep them in. That's fox proof and like animal proof. So it's really important that if you're gonna have an urban setting, even like in a rural setting, make sure that their enclosure is fox proof. Just another rant on chickens, that's another PSA. But so we built that at the beginning of the year, and I've had chickens for coming up in January for 12 months, and I love them so much. So yeah, as I said, they eat the food scraps. You just kind of have to distinguish between what goes to the worms, what goes to the chickens, and what goes to the compost. Each type of composting system has their own yes and no's, like what they can and don't enjoy having in their composting environment. So with the chickens also, you get eggs from them. So these food scraps are being turned into eggs, which is also saving on our grocery bills because we don't need to buy eggs anymore. And this whole thing about the cost of living crisis and the pandemic and things not being in stock. I went shopping on a few days ago and they had no eggs in the supermarket, like no eggs at all. And I don't know what was going on there, but we don't have to worry about that because we've got 3 chickens. We get 3 eggs a day. There might be a few days where we get 2, or during winter they might slow down for a little bit. But at the moment we've been getting 3 eggs a day, and that's saving us so much money on groceries. We're eating healthy. We're eating healthy fresh eggs from the garden. We know what the chickens are eating. They're getting plenty of greens, plenty of weeds, plenty of like seeds and grains and everything else, plus the food scraps from the kitchen. So it's just another thing where it's a complete cycle. That recycling process, there's like no waste product being created, and we get to save money on groceries by having eggs. And also the compost. Twice a year we like muck out their little enclosure, their keep, and then we put it in the compost bin, and we also spread it on the garden beds to like keep composting in place. So chicken manure is quite rich, I think the word is. So it's not advised to use straight onto plants because it can burn it because it's so rich. It needs to sit for a bit and break down more before it can be used. But just as some of my winter crops were finishing a few months ago, we mucked out the chicken enclosure because it was just so wet. We had so much rain and everything was just mush. So we cleaned it out. We gave them some fresh bedding on the floor of their keep, and I just put it on some of the beds that were empty. And so it took a few weeks, probably about a month, but it's now it's at a good kind of decomposition level, and I've planted some things into it now. So that also saves on compost if you got chickens. They're, as I said before, like their poop and their manure and their like their bedding, it all adds to the composting process, saving you money and putting that nutrients back into the soil. So moving on, for mulch, my tip for frugal mulch is, if you don't have chickens, get chickens, but also wood chips from arborists. So depending on your area and also the arborist, you can call around to some arborist companies or some independent arborists, and they might just offload their wood chips or their wood mulch to you for free. They might charge a little bit, but ultimately if you develop that relationship with local independent kind of workers in your area, they might drop some off for free. They'll tell you when they've got a good kind of tree they had to cut down or some branches, the different benefits of different trees that have been mulched. There's heaps to do for research in this area. I personally haven't done that yet because I don't have a need for that much wood chip mulch. If I was on a big rural property, then for sure I would like definitely look into that. There are some companies online, or like some websites online, where it's like free wood chips and like chip drop and stuff like that, but I don't know how effective they are in actually like getting what you want in a timely manner. I know in the US a chip drop is like huge, a lot of people use it, but I did some research on chip drop in in Australia, and it's not popular at all. So I would really like, if you really need like wood chip mulch, I would just recommend calling up a local arborist, having a chat, developing that relationship, and seeing what goes from there. So my final tip on frugal gardening tips and hacks to save some money in the garden is propagating. So with propagating, you're literally creating new plants from existing plants. So there's plenty of ways to do it. Like there's water propagating, so you're just cutting a stem of like basil or tomato or something like that, putting it in like a little jar of water, and they may produce roots like that. Or you can propagate like hardwood cuttings, put them into like a growing medium, like a soil or sand, or there's all these different ways of doing it. There's so many different ways of propagating plants. You just have to do some research, but you're literally creating a new plant from a cutting of an original plant. So with roses, fruit trees grow from seeds, they can grow from cuttings, they put onto rootstock. There's so many things you can do. If you really want to make new plants and fill in some space in your garden, or you want to, you know, make a hedge or something, just take some cuttings of, buy one plant, take some cuttings, get them established, and you're making plants for free. So I plan on doing a lot of propagating in the future. I want to propagate some of my bay leaf tree, and also like some tomato and basil. It's so easy to propagate, but I really want to do that as well. Also want to give lavender a go too. So watch this space in the future for some propagating videos. So guys, I hope that wasn't too much for you. I just put a quick list together of some of my frugal gardening tips of what I do personally, what I do. There's a few others that I want to do in the future that I don't currently do, but they all save me money in the garden. Gardening is a hobby of mine, so I kind of don't want to spend hundreds of dollars each week buying new products, fixing up things, buying plants. It's a very frugal hobby and passion. A lot of people, a lot of older people, they used gardening as a way to live, like they had to do it to survive. So you kind of want to keep those costs down as low as possible, and kind of the only output or the big investment is your time. That's what I want my hobbies to be, I want my passions to be. I might spend $50 here or there on like something that I can't create myself, but ultimately gardening on a budget and, you know, zero waste kind of sense, like using everything, reusing things, giving things a second life. It just makes your lifestyle a lot more eco-friendly, and in this current economic climate, you can save money here and there. It's a bonus, it's a win-win. So if you liked any of these tips, give me a like, chuck a comment down below if I missed anything, or if you've got anything else to add. And thanks guys, so I'll see you in my next upload. In the meantime, I've got some other videos that you can watch while you wait, and if you could like and subscribe to my channel, I'd really appreciate a subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks guys, bye.